It is another Metropolitan matchup. We're doing a squadcast with Rachel and Russ over at Locked On Flyers on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
Your Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster. Joining me in a minute will be my co-host, Hayden Heilson, and also Rachel Donner and Russ Cohen of Locked On Flyers. We're doing a squadcast today, all about how the Flyers offseason has been, hopes for the season, and some fun predictions about who's going to win the Stanley Cup. Spoiler alert, it's not the Flyers or the Blue Jackets. So that's all coming up in a minute. Before we do all of that, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube and SiriusXM as well, the radio app. If you are a radio person, you can find us there as well. I also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. I'm just going to throw over to myself and Hayden and Rachel and Russ from the past as we talk a little bit about the Philadelphia Flyers. We're back. It's another squadcast, another Metropolitan matchup, and we've got the wonderful people from Locked On Flyers here to answer a couple of questions. We had Rachel on very recently for the Ivan Provorov trade. We've got Russ here with us today as well. So let's just get things started straight off. How do you guys, Rachel, how do you feel about the offseason so far for the Flyers?
You know, it's really interesting because I think it's been a pretty solid. I wouldn't give them an A+. I would give them like an A minus because like a couple things went south, right? With like the big supposed deal with the Blues that was going to include Travis Sanheim. That didn't happen. But real solid in terms of trying to clear the decks in a rebuild, trying getting some cap space together. And then I think a really good draft in, of course, with the first round pick of Matvei Michkov, which I think is a risk that the Flyers of the past would not have taken, but this crew did. And so I think, you know, it's the beginning of a long rebuild. And so I think there's a lot of excitement right now. But the problem is we have to kind of like live through it, right, over the next couple of years.
We know all about that. So,
yes, we know all about rebuilds. That is for darn sure. One thing we also know a lot about is John Tortorella. And right now, he's your guys' coach. He's coming on to year 2, I believe. How the Torts era... Russ, how's the Torts era looked so far for the organization? Has it been a good thing? Has it been a frustrating thing? Is it even a long-term thing, or is this just a guy standing behind the bench for now?
You know, it may not turn into a long-term thing. I think when they first signed him, that was their intention, but then they found out quickly they weren't a contender. And then, you know, about 3/4 into the season, John was like, yeah, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought as far as the way the players were and the way everything was laid out. So he had to sort of change his mindset. And I think he did. And I think, you know, he's going to bounce back to some degree, but now he's going to be, you know, asked to develop some more kids more than he's normally done in the past. And we'll see how many of them he actually puts on the lineup because, you know, Johnny likes to play the veterans anyhow, regardless of what management thinks. So, you know, this could turn into a year where nobody's expecting the Flyers to do well. But if players don't advance and some of the young players don't do well, then I think he could be on the hot seat. So I think this is up to John how he kind of wants to handle this now because it's maybe not what he signed up for, but it's the team he has now.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, the second biggest trade in recent memory for the Flyers and the Blue Jackets was that Jake Voracek, Cam Atkinson trade. Voracek was great for us last season, is obviously with Arizona now, and is probably not going to play another NHL game. Cam Atkinson missed, I believe, all like the entire last season with a neck injury.
Yeah.
How important to this season is having a fully healthy Cam Atkinson if he is indeed going to be fully healthy this season?
You know, I think it's important in the sense of having an additional veteran around to help mentor the younger guys. I think that that's something that he can provide and is very good at. He's a leader. And I think, his skill set is a good kind of skill set to emulate for other guys as well. So I think there's that. There's also of course, just as a human, you want to see him succeed and come back and play just because he's an exciting, fun player to watch, as y'all know. And so you just want to see him out there on the ice. I think, with Voracek essentially having to retire and Cam Atkinson, we still don't know for sure, signs and what we're being told are that he's going to be good to go for training camp. But, it's been a year and a half since he's had contact hockey. And so it's going to be an adjustment. And, he had a neck surgery and chose the other option from what Jack Eichel did. Right. And so this is an option that is harder to recover from. And the risks are higher. So we're not counting on anything, but we certainly are hoping and wishing for the best here.
I think it looks, if you can just, again, not contact hockey, but all the skills seem to be there for him. Another guy that I think everybody in the league is kind of jealous of is a guy like Owen Tippett, who you guys acquired from the Florida Panthers. Now, young dude, just finished up his 4th season in the NHL. He just played his most games he's played in a season at 77, and he had 27 goals last year. Is that kind of feel like his ceiling kind of floating right around 30 goals, or does he have room to even burst through that?
No, I think 30 is his ceiling because there were some games he played an inordinate amount of ice time, like 24 minutes, 25 minutes. Like there were some games that's just crazy.
That's the we know and love.
Yeah. Now he could improve on that if he actually if his shot gets a little more accurate. It's still not where you want it to be, but I think it's right around 30 is what they're going to probably hope for year to year. And I think it's going to vary. I think it's going to vary based on his line mates. I think it's going to vary based on the team, and it'll also vary based on him kind of improving still the rest of his game. There's still things like, he's a decent playmaker. He's not great, but he's okay at that. His defense has gotten a little better, so that's good. His skating's good. He's good in the corners, but again, he has to hit the net more. That's the biggest thing. This guy could have had 35 goals last year, easy, had he had a little better shooting percentage. And so we'll see. We'll see if that improves.
I don't know that it's possible for us to do an episode without talking about goalie things. Both of our teams kind of have question marks in goal, I would say. Who do you like to back up Carter Hart? Because I feel like it's very much kind of a boom or bust season for him. If he doesn't have a bad season, it could be, he could be on his way out. You picked up Cal Peterson from the LA Kings. You've got Sam Ersson and Felix Sandstrom in the organization. Who do you like to kind of stand behind Carter Hart this season?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is rewind a little bit and ask the question if Carter Hart is going to be playing for the Flyers this season, because we do not know the outcome of the Hockey Canada report yet.
Yes.
And if there will be a suspension involved, at least as of recording this episode. And so that's a factor we've had to take under consideration. Now, obviously, if he's, not part of this and there's no suspension involved or any of that, he's going to be part of this team, right? And he's going to be the 1A goaltender. But that does remain a question. And then if you look at the other potential goaltenders, Cal Peterson, while, we took him on as part of that Provorov deal, in terms of the salary dump from the Kings, there's no guarantee that he would be the backup. I think the Flyers feel perfectly comfortable with sending him to Lehigh Valley. Don't think anybody would take him in waivers, that's for sure. So I think that it's going to be likely Sam Ersson, but possibly Felix Sandstrom as the other guy. But it could be the three of them competing for it. There's also the wild card remote possibility that Ivan Fedotov could end up coming over because the Flyers have challenged the KHL contract that he has, because it should have been pushed to this season based on how things have gone in the past. But all indications are that he's just going to play in the KHL. And this is kind of a last ditch effort. I think just from a process perspective, that's why they're doing it, just to make sure that everybody knows that this was inappropriate. And so they're dotting I's and crossing T's for any future NHL, KHL conflicts. That is my guess is what's going on here with that. But it is one of those small wild cards that could upset the apple cart. But yeah, there are, I think, 4 possible goaltenders here for 2 spots, and honestly, it's anybody's guess at this point.
As we come to the end of the Flyers portion of this crossover episode, I'd like to ask you guys both one last question. We'll start with you, Russ. What is the key to success for you personally for the Flyers this season? Like, what do the Flyers need to do to have a successful season? What even is a successful season? Because we know the Metropolitan division is just brutal. But yeah, what do the Flyers need to do to remain competitive?
Yeah, I think they just need to be close in games. They shouldn't even be as successful as far as winning as many as last year. You really want to be in the top 5 of this draft. I think that's a key. I think another key is, the young players stepping forward. You really need to play as many of them as you can and give them as many games as you can without jumbling them around and kind of, pretending like, well, we can't play him more than 3 or 4 games. He's not scoring and, we're a supposed playoff team. Well, that's not the case. So we shouldn't see any of that this year. But I'll tell you, the interesting thing is, and I saw this yesterday and I forget which outlet, the Flyers actually have a better cup chance than the Columbus Blue Jackets. I don't know why. And they have listed that so far. I think it's going to change. But
sorry to the Flyers, but that's so funny.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But here we are.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We actually did a listener poll of our listeners of what the biggest priority was for them, for the Flyers for this upcoming season. And it was like not even a question by a big margin. It was prospect development and making sure that the young kids are coming along in the right way. And, they're given the best opportunities to succeed. And I think with Tortorella, that might be a challenge, right? Is to get them those chances. But I think that everybody knows really what the biggest things the Flyers need to focus on this year are.
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a very quick break, and then we'll flip the script here. I'm sure you guys have plenty of questions for the Blue Jackets, who have had kind of a quiet month so far, but had a pretty busy off-season just before that. So we'll do that in just a second. We are going to get into some Blue Jackets and Flyers talk in just a second. But first, I want to tell all of you about FanDuel. Because football season's about to kick off, FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you're going to get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you're going to get bonus bets for every time they win a game. You can use those on spreads, player props, over-unders, more. Baseball is still happening. Hockey season is going to be starting soon. Do you want to bet on who's going to win the Stanley Cup? You can do that at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start earning bonus bets today with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon.
So it's so great to have a Metro Division crossover episode with the guys from Locked On Columbus Blue Jackets. And I think kind of the biggest question that Flyers fans might have is, now that you've had time to think about it and see where he might fit into the team, how are you feeling about the Ivan Provorov trade, and where will he slot in?
Yeah, I feel a lot better about the trade. I still don't love the trade necessarily. But having kind of had some time to look at how the Blue Jackets defense is shaping up this season, and obviously we talked a couple of days after the trade, and you kind of gave us a rundown of what kind of player he is, what kind of role he could play. I do feel better about it. I didn't like the trade. I didn't like giving up the first. I don't necessarily think the Blue Jackets needed to pick up another defenseman when they already have so many, but it is what it is. He's probably going to slot into that second line, that second pairing, just behind Zach Werenski, providing Zach Werenski can stay healthy this season. I'm going to knock on wood. But as of right now, it's looking like the Blue Jackets' top 4 is going to be some kind of combination of Werenski, Provorov, Damon Severson, who they picked up from the New Jersey Devils, and then a fourth guy that is going to win his spot in camp. I personally would like that to be David Jiricek, but people are saying it's probably going to be an Adam Boquist or maybe Jake Bean. So that's kind of the top four for the Blue Jackets, which is immediately better than how they finished last season, which I believe had Eric Branson and Andrew Peake as our top defense pairing. So he solidifies the defense in a way that makes me feel a little more reassured. I think it's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, I'm just going to finish that thought too and just say that I think Jiricek will really push those other two. Like I'm not counting them out.
No,
I
I'm
think
for sure not.
Based on the year he had last year in the AHL. So I think while I like those other two, they don't have what Jiricek has. So it just depends if he's ready. Zach Werenski is 100% this year, Hayden. Like that, what does that do to the team as far as just overall? They were missing him badly last year. You got to think he helps the team a lot, and he's got to at least add up for some wins in the wins column.
Yeah, he changes everything when he is in the lineup for the Blue Jackets. We already said in his season review, I think Jay was a little shocked when I first said it, but he is the best defenseman in Columbus Blue Jackets history. Like he has already surpassed two in the points race for that. So, and we have him for, he's only, only 25. So like we got him. He's ours. And he changes everything when he's in the lineup. Unfortunately, he has had some injury issues over the last few years. And the second that he gets injured, the team instantly, like their play dips to a level that is just, it's not fun. So yeah, he changes everything when he's in the lineup. He's gotten a lot better since Seth Jones left. I thought when Seth Jones departed from Columbus that the better defenseman left and that we were left behind with kind of the partner in a sense. But no, I really think that Zach Werenski has stepped up and has been even a better player than what we had in Zach Werenski. I think he has taken on a leadership role that's huge. Now, the biggest thing is he just needs to be on the ice because he's not helping us sitting up in a suite, So as long as he's on the ice, the team is going to be competitive. They also have to figure out the rest of the lineup. Obviously, he's not the only thing, but he also just I'd like him to play less minutes because I feel like the last couple of years the Blue Jackets relied on him so heavily. So getting Provorov, giving Severson, and Blankenberg being a huge factor, and David Jiricek coming up through the ranks, those guys are going to be huge, helping keep Zach Werenski off the ice and healthy. But yeah, he makes all the difference in the world when he's in the lineup. There's no question.
I mean, just to follow up on that, I hate to tell you, but Mike Babcock kills number one defenseman in minutes. So he's gonna, he's gonna play just as much, or if not more, than he's ever played in his career. My guess.
Can't wait.
So I think obviously, new coach, right, and some new signings. How are you feeling about this offseason overall? Like aside from the draft, we'll get to that. But like aside from the draft, how do you think Columbus has done, and have you taken a step forward?
It's been such a weird off season, I think, because you look at like what they've added and what they've lost. If you look at outside of the draft, the only players that they've added really are Severson and Provorov, who are both fine second pairing defensemen, but are not really going to move the needle for this team in the way that I think that Jarmo Kekalainen thinks they will necessarily. But then you look, and we'll talk about the draft in a minute, I'm sure, but you look at who they picked up in the draft. You look at who they're getting back from injury. Patrick Laine missed half the season. Zach Werenski played 13 games. Jake Bean played 14 games. Like, everyone was injured. Johnny Gaudreau was the only healthy player on this team, and he missed a couple of games, So it's been a weird offseason because I don't think they've done much. All they've kind of done is wait and get their guys healthy. And they made a couple of trades, which I feel, we talked about the Provorov trade. I think that could have been better. I feel fine about the Severson trade. The contract is a little long and a little pricey for my liking, but that's what you pay for free agents. That's what you pay for in free agency, and that's essentially what this was. So the draft is definitely like the gem of the offseason for me, but I don't think it wasn't a great offseason outside of the draft. It wasn't a terrible offseason. It was very kind of, I feel fine about it.
I mean, the thing about the the draft, Hayden, is that I was a little surprised Adam Fantilli signed. Not because he told me he was going to go back to Michigan and everything. I understand things change. Just I felt like the Jackets put a full court press on him because they're sort of a little desperate to show the fans what they have. And I'm not saying Fantilli's not up to the task. I think he is, but I think he'd be better if he waited a year. And I was a little surprised that management didn't feel that way. And then again, on our show, we talked about Andrew Strathman a lot. It's a guy that I targeted early in the year. And so I like him too. And, just want to get your feeling about what you feel about Fantilli, what you think about Strathman, if he's like a value pick, and anybody else that they drafted. We could chat him for a minute.
Yeah, just speaking real quickly to Fantilli, I think Blue Jackets fans have had our eyes on him in a Blue Jackets uniform since like December. And, we were in the race to get Connor Bedard. We kind of knew that wasn't going to happen. I think deep down in our souls, we knew Gary Bettman was not going to let the Blue Jackets have the number 1 overall pick. We didn't even have the 2nd overall pick. We thought we were getting Leo Carlsson. Ducks made the decision that they made. Here's Adam Fantilli, the guy that we wanted kind of from the get-go. And I just feel like Adam's just wired differently. I feel like he wants to play in the NHL. He was great in college last year. I'm an Ohio State fan, so I definitely don't want to see him in a Michigan uniform next year. But it wouldn't have been bad for him. You're absolutely right. One more year playing with a guy like Gavin Brindley, who we also drafted in the 2nd round, would have been great.
Yep.
And it would have been great for his development. But I think getting him in there right away, getting him NHL experience is going to be huge for his career. I just hope it works out better than it's worked out for some other guys so far. Like Cole Sillinger is another guy that the Blue Jackets organization threw in the fire right away, and he kind of burned out fairly quickly. Now he's kind of having a resurgence, but I don't think Adam Fantilli's a player that's going to burn out that quickly. I think his game's going to translate immediately. So, I was a little surprised to see him, as forward with it as the organization was, but I also love that at the same time. So I'm really happy that we're getting him. And a guy like Strathman, who we got, I believe he played in Youngstown last year, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
He's awesome. I think he'll be back in Youngstown, I believe. He's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited about a guy like him as well.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add on top of this, at the combine, it turns out that Brindley's taken like sports management classes, and I asked jokingly if he was going to be Fantilli's agent one day, and he said maybe, because they're buddies. And sure enough, at the signing, Brindley's right there at Fantilli's signing. So it's like, I'm going to just say it right here. I think that's going to happen someday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we actually had yesterday's episode was our interview with Gavin Brindley, and he talked at length about how much he likes Adam Fantilli and how good friends they are. And obviously, in terms of Strathman, they drafted 2 teammates from the Youngstown Phantoms as well. And I do feel like the Blue Jackets are going into this as like, we're going to build a team through the buddy system, which is a lot of fun. Everyone's got to have a friend. So
there you go.
Yeah, I think, the last couple of years in the draft for Columbus have been real good. And it's laying the groundwork. And I just think, like, in this division, timing is everything. Like, how do you feel about Columbus's timing as far as what they're trying to put together here in the division?
I think it could be better, but it also could be a lot worse. I think when you see kind of how other teams do, like Washington is only going to get older and slower as they've flat out said, oh, we're not going to rebuild while Ovechkin is here or while Ovechkin is chasing the record. So like they're just going to keep doing what they're doing, and they're going to get older, and they're not going to tear it down. Pittsburgh is also going to keep getting older, I think, probably for at least a couple of seasons. So really, those 2 teams are kind of on the downward slope. The Islanders might be good this season. I'm not counting on it, but it could happen. And then you look at Carolina, they're always good. The Flyers obviously are kind of the Flyers are kind of where the Blue Jackets were 2 or 3 seasons ago, so they're probably a little ways away. The teams are really kind of benchmark against, I feel like, is New Jersey, who seem to have gone from being bad, terrible, to suddenly, oh, these guys could win the Metro, and like that's not a hot take. That's a very good team. So that they're on the upward trajectory. I feel like the Blue Jackets are on an upward trajectory. The Flyers are kind of staying where they are, I think. no one really knows what the Rangers are going to do. I feel like the Rangers don't really know what they're going to do. So, like, I feel pretty good about the timing because it feels like a lot of other Metro teams are kind of either on that downward slope or are about to start that downward slope. So I feel like the Blue Jackets, if they can, I think the plan was this season to take a big jump in terms of rebuild. Obviously, they went out and they picked up Provorov, they picked up Damon Severson. Obviously, Adam Fantilli is going to take things. That's going to give them a jump. I think they're less patient this year, which just to kind of go back to Adam Fantilli signing his entry level, I do think it is a little bit of impatience of they want the team to succeed. And they want to, I don't think it's Jarmo Kekalainen making moves to save his job, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's being aggressive because management's getting impatient. But yeah, I feel like the timing is pretty good. It could be a little better. I personally think that they may have rushed the rebuild a little bit, but if the Blue Jackets want to be competitive this season, like I'm excited about that, and I think it's probably a pretty good season to start being competitive in. I'm not expecting them to win the cup this season, but I would like them to make the playoffs this season, and it feels like that's the step forward. And then the next year you win a round, and then the year after that maybe you win a couple, and an upward trajectory like that I think is good. And as the other teams get older, hopefully the Blue Jackets will just keep going up.
So my last question for you, Hayden, is you do have Mike Babcock, who's really not a developmental coach, but he's going to have to help bring guys along. Now, Ken Johnson at least is 1 year into his career, and I think he could help him a lot, especially since his puck possession is so good in the corners. He probably could get him aligned more to get more points, and I think you'll see that. But you still have to bring Fantilli along, even though there's a lot of things that he does like an NHLer. There's a lot of things that he still has to learn. He might get frustrated with the goaltending because, Elvis has not necessarily been great. So what do you think about Babcock? This isn't a weird spot for him.
It's a very weird spot for him, but it's also a team that has had really, they didn't have a coach the last couple of years. I don't think Brad Larson necessarily did a bad job for his first couple of years as coaching, but there was definitely some signs of, this team has no structure. They have they just have no fire underneath them, as it felt like at times. I feel like Mike Babcock is that guy immediately that's going to resonate. Just his hockey knowledge is just having that in the locker room is going to be massive. I hope he's a different coach than what happened in Toronto. I think we're actually getting him at a really good time because he faced so much scrutiny from what happened in Toronto. It's very similar to when the Blue Jackets got Torts. He had come off facing so much scrutiny. And I feel like we got a new and improved Torts in that way. So I'm really optimistic about the Mike Babcock that comes in. And the stories about how he, treated Marner back then is just, it's sad. And I don't like to think about it. I don't like to think about that kind of stuff happening to Adam Fantilli. But, oh man, I hope that if anything, he gets the team to play with just a little bit of structure because they certainly could use it. And then just pointing to the goalie, I think Elvis has had a couple of down years. I definitely think he has. But, he's ours. And, just like he's actually in a very similar situation as a guy like Carter Hart, I feel like. Like we saw a lot from him early on, and then it's kind of fallen off. You're kind of just wishing that maybe some structure in front of him, some better defensemen will help put him in the right direction. And I just think of all the offseason acquisitions, Fantilli in the draft, or we call him Proverson in the trade. We've grouped Damon Severson and Ivan Provorov into one guy. But of all the acquisitions the Blue Jackets made, I think the biggest one that you're going to notice off the bat is Mike Babcock. I think he is going to get the team playing in the right way. And if they can just stay competitive to December and stay healthy to that point, then I think they can make a playoff run. But all those things need to go right in those first couple months. It's going to be a very crucial start to the NHL season, and I'm very excited for the matchup on opening night, October 12th. I mean, Torts behind the bench for the Flyers, playing in Nationwide, and Mike Babcock making his debut for the Blue Jackets. That is going to be an awesome night, and we'll probably have a lot of these questions answered by then, or at least by the end of the game one. But it's going to be a fun season for sure. And I think Mike Babcock is a huge reason why I'm excited as a Blue Jackets fan.
Yeah, it's going to be a real cool opening to the season, I think, with our two teams facing each other. We will get into more just league-wide predictions and divisional questions answered coming up next.
Let's do a couple of just kind of fun predictions. We've kind of been asking these to all of the Metro hosts that we've done these crossovers with. Who's your pick for MVP for the Flyers? Start with Rachel, and then we'll go to Russ.
Ooh, I don't know, man. Like, that's a tough question. I think, if you're looking at it from just a pure points perspective and what's going on, I would say Travis Konechny, but he might get dealt at the deadline. And so will that even matter at that point? I don't know. I'm sure hoping it's Sean Couturier and he's healthy and he comes back with a bang. I'll tell you that. That would, I think, be the most ideal outcome, is to have him be the MVP of the team.
Russ,
I'm going to go Noah Cates. I think it's Noah Cates. I think he made a nice jump last year. If he's comfortable, you might get more points out of him. But overall, I think that's what he's going to do. And I think Rachel's right. Like, Konechny could be gone, so he'll be there all year in a prominent spot.
Yeah. Hey, what about you? Who's your pick for Blue Jackets MVP this season?
Yeah, it's kind of weird getting excited about this season, and it's actually really nice to get excited about this season and not even think about Johnny Gaudreau. Like, he had a 90-point season last year. I hope he only goes up from there. I hope we see more of what we saw with him and Matthew Tkachuk. I hope Adam Fantilli. I hope that connection is just reignited again, but basically in the form of Adam Fantilli, who has said that he models his game after Matthew Tkachuk, which could have been a nice layup because he obviously got drafted by the Blue Jackets, and we got Johnny Gaudreau now. But if he anyway emulates Matthew Tkachuk, then I believe Johnny Gaudreau is going to have a much better season. And again, he had a great season last year, but he's the star of the team. He's the heartbeat of the team. I believe he changed he completely reset the Blue Jackets rebuild. So I'm putting it on him to be the team MVP, because you saw what he can do when he got the Flames to the playoffs. I mean, the guy's a game breaker, and I want to see that happen in Columbus.
Yeah, Gaudreau would also be my pick for MVP, but I think to keep it interesting, I will make a different choice. I'm going to go Patrick Laine. If Patrick Laine is healthy and has real line mates this season and gets to keep those line mates for more than 45 minutes, he could score 40 or 50 goals in this league, and he was looking real good last season. He struggled with injuries, struggled with inconsistent line mates and inconsistent ice time, but he had 52 points in 55 games, I believe. And yeah, I think I'm gonna go out on a limb and make a hot take, maybe, but I think Patrick Laine is getting at least 30 goals this season, and I think he's definitely capable of getting 40 or 50. So that's my pick for MVP for the Blue Jackets. And then we'll finish off with one. Normally we start off by saying that you can't pick your own team for this, but I feel like with this matchup, it's maybe not as much of an issue. Who's going to win the Stanley Cup? If you couldn't pick the Flyers, who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I don't think. When was the last time I actually picked the Flyers to make it to the Stanley Cup? I honestly could not even tell you who that might have been. Geez, I feel like this is more of an open season than it's been for a while. I feel like, looking at Vegas, that's a sort of a I feel like in division, I feel like the Canes are on this precipice of maybe falling apart in a lot of ways, but I feel like they're still there. Like, everything is there, but like, if one little thing goes wrong, it could all fall apart. That's how I feel about the Canes right now. And the Pens, like, they're doing the best they can, and they're going to be at their ceiling of potential, which is good. Like, I don't think they're bad. I just think there is a ceiling of what they'll be able to do this season. I don't know if it'll be enough, but geez, probably a team out west.
I'm going to go Colorado Avalanche. I feel like they, with Landeskog and everything, that was kind of a shock to the system. You always get all those injuries coming out, of a cup win, and that always affects the year. And so I just feel like now they have a good chance to sort of, not even reboot. I mean, a lot of the same guys are there. You have Rantanen, you have McKinnon. I think they're fine in goal with Georgiev. So I actually think this will be a really good year for them. And I feel like, they could, if you want to say surprise people, maybe it'll surprise a few, but I don't think it would surprise a lot.
Yeah, I feel like the Avalanche are one of those teams where you think, oh, they've lost a couple of key pieces, and then they've got 5 more key pieces standing directly behind that.
Yeah.
They're never, you didn't even mention Kale McCarr, Bo Byram.
No, I mean, there's all that. Yeah,
for a long time, and it's so frustrating. Hayden, how about you? Who's your pick to win the cup? You're not allowed to pick the Blue Jackets, obviously.
Yeah, I also had the Colorado Avalanche. I think with the Landeskog injury, I think maybe a little bit of a Stanley Cup hangover last year for them, but their core is still intact. Their core is still young. And we know that in the NHL, the teams like to go back to the Stanley Cup, and they like to win multiple of them. And thank God this is a team in the West, not a team in the East like we're used to dealing with. But I think for all the reasons Russ just said, another team I really like is the Kraken. I mean, hell, they made some huge jumps last year, and getting to the playoffs was awesome. I don't want them to win the Stanley Cup because I don't want another expansion franchise to win a Stanley Cup over the Blue Jackets. But that would mean more in my heart for them to win a cup than Vegas, just because of their hockey history. So yeah, I'm gonna, just for the sake of changing it up, I'll go with the Kraken here.
Yeah, I'm also gonna go with a team from the West. With as much as it pains me to admit it, Locked On Blue Jackets listeners will know my long feud with the Dallas Stars, which has no basis in absolutely anything, but they're building a real good team out there in Dallas. And they got better, I think. I think adding Duchesne is a big boost for them. Joe Pavelski refuses to age. Jason Robertson is a superstar. Like they've got all of the pieces. They've got maybe the best young goalie in the NHL right now in Jake Ottinger. Like there's a lot going on to like in Dallas, as much as it pains me to admit it. And I think that's kind of all we've got right now. Like you said, the Flyers and the Blue Jackets are going to be facing off for the Blue Jackets home opener on October 12th, which is going to be real exciting. If people want to learn more about the Flyers, they want to catch up with some Cam Atkinson talk, maybe, where can people find you guys and your show, Rachel?
We are all over social media at Locked On Flyers, wherever you want to find us. The app formerly known as Twitter. We're on Threads. We're on Blue Sky even. So check us out wherever you are.
That's all we've got for today. No episode tomorrow, but later tonight we will be doing happy hour. So come and hang out with us at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll have a beer. We'll have some talk. I don't have a fun Pierre-Luc Dubois story this time, but I'm sure Hayden can think of something fun. If you've got questions for that, you can comment below. You can add us on Twitter. You can DM us on Twitter. You can email us at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find Hayden at HaydenH971. The show is at LO_Blue Jackets. And thank you once again for listening, for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube and SiriusXM. And until later tonight or until Monday, make sure you stay locked on.